Welcome to Cook the Garden podcast, your weekly audio source for delicious and easy garden fresh recipes and growing tips. I'm your host, Ginain Grays. Let's cook the garden. Hey, garden foodies. Welcome to Cook the Garden podcast. I'm so excited to welcome back a dear friend of the show, and it's the amazing Amy Katz. So Amy's the brilliant creator and food blogger behind Veggies Save the Day. She's also a certified vegan nutrition health coach and a passionate advocate for all things vegan and plant-based. Now, if you've heard season 2, you may remember Amy. She came on the show and it was such a great conversation. We talked about incorporating easy plant-based meals into our lifestyles, and she dropped so many gems, and including one of my favorite salad recipes. So definitely check out that conversation. If you haven't yet, I'll put that link in the show notes. But for today, it's round 2 with Amy, and I couldn't be more excited to have her back on Cook the Garden. So in this episode, we're talking about all things plant-based and holiday feasting. And she's also sharing one of her very popular plant-based recipes that I know you all are going to love making this holiday season. All right, friends, I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Let's get cooking with Amy Katz. Hi, Amy. How are you?
Hi, Ginain. It's great to be here with you again.
I'm so excited to have you back. It's been a few months, I guess, but I am so excited to talk to you today, Amy, about plant-based, getting ready for the holidays, plant-based recipes. How are we going to plan and all that good stuff? But as you know, before we get into the conversation, I want to ask you, Amy, what are you growing in your garden? I know you're a grower. I know you're a gardener. So what are you growing these days?
Well, right now we're mostly growing citrus. So the plant that's looking the best right now is actually a small kumquat tree that's planted in a terracotta pot that's, quite large. But I'm excited because I'm starting to see the fruit. So it's still green, but hopefully we'll have some nice bright orange kumquats in a few months.
Oh, I'm so excited for you. I have a little kumquat tree as well. And we're starting to get the fruit on it, and it's looking really, really good. So I'm really excited. Every year I make my kumquat marmalade. Ooh. And I'm actually going to try to do some interesting things with my kumquats this year. So we'll see. Well, I want to do some baking and just getting creative with it. So do you have any plans for your kumquats?
Well, to be honest, like most of the times we just snack on them because they're just so delicious. Yeah. And if anyone hasn't tried a kumquat before, one of my friends described it as like an inside out orange, which is a great description because the inside is tart, but the outside, the skin is sweet, and they're small, and you actually pop the whole thing in your mouth, so seeds and all. You can eat the whole thing, and they're so delicious. But sometimes if I do want to use some, I like to just slice them up and put them in a salad. It's kind of a nice treat. Yeah.
Yes, that gives it a nice little pop, that citrusy pop.
Yeah.
And it can be really complimenting in a salad. So that's a really good point. And you're right. We're like you too. Like a lot of times I'll just snack right off the tree. And, there's nothing like it. There's nothing. And they can be really expensive. I've noticed at least here. Just for like a little containers over $7. And I'm like, okay, really? Here. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually what started us searching for a tree to plant because we, really enjoy them, but it's just, they're so pricey and sometimes they're hard to find in the stores too.
They are. They can be really hard to find. So it always helps when when you've got a tree, steps from your home and you can
Yeah.
go pick them and there's nothing like it. So that's amazing. Do you have any other trees
Well,
or citrus?
we also have a lime tree and a Meyer lemon tree. And
Nice.
right now those are producing, some small fruit. So it'll be a few months before we get the full size ripe
Yeah.
fruit. But those are
Awesome.
always good. And we also have a small navel orange tree, but that hasn't produced yet. But it's a
Yeah.
fairly new tree. We've had about a year, or well, it's coming up on maybe 2 years, but hopefully we'll get some fruit eventually.
You will. Sometimes it takes quite a few years. We have
Hmm.
a tangelo tree, and it's
Mm.
taking quite some time for it to fruit. So we're hoping it looks like it may fruit this year. So we'll see. I'll have to keep you guys updated on the tangelo tree, but I'm really
Yeah.
excited about that.
Yeah, let me
So
know. Tangelos are really good too. I
oh my
like those.
gosh. Yeah, they're really good. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'll keep you posted on that. But thank you for sharing what you have going on in your garden. And I'm excited about your kumquats.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
So today we are going to talk about plant-based holiday feasts. How are we going to navigate that this year? And I can't wait to hear, Amy, all of the, ideas that you can share. We were talking earlier about how I know for at least for myself, I'm starting to think about my holiday menu. We've got Thanksgiving coming up in a couple of weeks. The holidays are here, and I know it's kind of on the minds of folks. And for myself, I will be preparing food for different types of diets. I've got some meat
Hmm.
eaters, and then I also have some plant-based eaters. So kind of bridging the two together, and I want to make the best of it. I know a lot of us listening are trying to figure that out right now. So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation and, getting some ideas from you.
Yeah, Janine, this is one of my favorite topics as well. And I think it's more and more common these days to have people gathering that are all different types of eaters, whether it's a dietary preference like myself, I'm vegan, or whether it's due to allergies or intolerances or sensitivities. That is more common than ever. A lot of people have to be gluten free, or maybe they're allergic to things like tree nuts or sesame. So it's very common these days. So, and I think that just doing a few easy things here and there can really make a difference and make your guests feel that they're really included, because there's nothing worse than going to, holiday gathering that you've been looking forward to and then find out there's really nothing that you could eat besides
Yeah.
like a plain salad that's just, lettuce and some cucumbers or
Exactly. Oh
something.
my goodness. You know what? It's so funny because this past week I actually had an event for work, and one of my colleagues is gluten free, and
Hmm.
they had a really beautiful buffet spread. But the only thing she could eat was salad, was lettuce.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I felt so bad for her. We ended up, going off site and grabbing her something. But I don't want that to happen to any of my
Yeah.
guests. I want people to be comfortable, to be able to enjoy delicious food. And I want all of us to be able to, fellowship around the island and be able to snack and eat delicious
Yeah.
food. So, yeah, that's the last thing I want anyone to experience. So
Yeah,
I'm glad you mentioned
exactly.
that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, since we are in our planning modes now for our holiday feast, I think one of the things that I like to start off with is asking my guests that I know I'm going to invite, do they have any dietary preferences or allergies? And I think just, getting that information up front before you finalize your menu makes a huge difference, because there's a lot of recipes where we can just make simple swaps, and it doesn't have to be where we're coming up with an entirely new recipe. There are things that that we can do that are really easy, like say you're, for example, like sauteing something, maybe instead of using dairy butter, maybe use olive oil or avocado oil instead, and it's really not going to change the entire dish, but it will just make it so that everyone can enjoy it. So I think that people that like you're talking about your coworker, or friends and family that are coming over, that they're not going to be eating everything, as long as they have a few dishes. I don't think that they mind. I mean, I personally wouldn't mind if I can't eat every single thing that you're serving,
Right.
but just having some thoughts in mind so that they actually have a complete meal,
Right.
even if it's composed of just maybe like three or four things versus like 5 to 7 things. I
Right.
think that makes a big difference, and it makes them feel included.
Oh my gosh, those are some great ideas, and just things to be mindful of. And having that conversation in the front end, like, okay, what are
Mm-hmm.
your food allergies? What are your preferences? Just knowing that instead of guessing,
Yeah.
is always the way to go. So I love
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
one approach, I've been trying to do lately is, so for instance, if I know I have someone who's on a plant-based diet, I'll maybe make I'm just giving you an example of fried rice,
Mm-hmm.
but like a veggie fried rice, and then I'll just have my meats on the side. So the
Yes.
folks who are still meat eaters, they can still have their meats on the side, but I'm not excluding my folks who are plant-based. They can still enjoy that vegetable fried rice. So that's just an
Yeah.
example that I
No,
like to do.
that's the perfect example. And yeah, that's absolutely something that I think everyone can appreciate. And it doesn't take any extra effort on your part, because you're already making the different dishes. So just having something on the side, I mean, it's not going to be extra effort for you.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think that is the perfect way to approach it.
And it's great for even leftovers, or thinking ahead. Like I always use the fried rice example, but it's such a great item
Hmm.
for using for leftovers. You can get creative and
Yeah.
do all kinds of other dishes.
Hmm.
When you go in that route. But tell me a little bit too, because I've been hearing a lot of folks talk about like meat alternatives. Of course, with
Hmm.
Thanksgiving right around the corner. Turkey, right? Turkey's like the
Yeah.
centerpiece of it all. Do you have any like vegan turkey alternatives? Any kind of
Yeah.
things you can share with us on that end?
Sure. I mean, now there are a lot of turkey alternatives on the market. It used to be that they only had a few, like there was the one called Tofurkey.
Yes,
That's
I've heard
actually a
that.
brand name. And that was kind of a joke, because, it used to be pretty bad. I mean, most people didn't want to try it, or they're afraid to. But these days, there's just a wide variety of alternatives on the market. But don't feel like you're limited to just buying something like that. I mean, sure, if that makes it easier for you, then by all means, just pick that up at your local supermarket. Most of them, they already have them ready to go in the frozen
Yeah.
section. So you just defrost them in the refrigerator and cook them, and that's super easy. But I think most people that are plant based, they are perfectly fine. I know myself, I would be perfectly fine just having a variety of side dishes. So we don't need to be like, literal in replacing
Yeah.
every single thing that's traditionally on the Thanksgiving table. So if you don't want to have the meat alternative, you really don't need to. For myself personally, when I've purchased them in the past, I mean, yeah, people like to try them, but a lot of times the other dishes are a lot more popular. So, you can do really nice things with like winter squash. You can do like a stuffed acorn squash or butternut squash. So it's completely plant based. Like I like to do a stuffed acorn squash that has a mixture of quinoa and chickpeas and
Ooh,
tomatoes. Yeah, and it's kind
that
of like
sounds
a
amazing.
Mediterranean flavors. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
good. So, you just stuff the squash with that, and it's even good just as a side dish on its own without the squash. But, dishes like that, or making some kind of like dish with lentils or, beans or anything like that, or
Yeah.
tofu.
Right.
You don't really have to have the actual turkey alternative if you don't
Well,
want
thank you
to.
for giving us that permission. That really kind of, helps and takes that pressure off, right? I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
we've got enough pressure as it is. We don't need to add to that. So
Right,
I'm
right.
glad that you're saying, hey, it's not, we don't have to have that turkey alternative that,
Right,
so
right.
and what you mentioned, some of those examples with the quinoa and the lentils, like those are really great protein sources,
Yeah.
and very hearty. I had not too long ago Beta and Beta from the Modern Persian
Oh,
Food
yeah.
podcast on, and they shared a delicious Persian bean noodle soup. It's called asharashta. Okay, I
Oh,
love that because I can say it now, asharashta.
yeah.
And no meat at all,
Oh,
and
yeah.
very rich in lentils, all types of beans. I think for mine, I have red kidney beans, and I also
Hmm.
included chickpeas. So very hearty. And I tell you what, my family loves it. They didn't even miss the meat. Like they don't care.
Yeah.
It was so filling and
Hmm.
hearty and comforting. So,
Yeah,
I
that's
just
a
love that you mentioned that.
exactly. And that's a great example. A lot of other cultures, they have a lot of dishes that are based on beans and lentils and grains, and they're very hearty and filling. So, that's a great alternative too. And, especially at Thanksgiving, when a lot of the dishes that we're serving are already pretty heavy,
Yes.
things like mashed potatoes
Yes.
and, sweet potatoes and stuffing. And, so it's like, really, no one is going to go away hungry, even if they just
Yeah.
have a few dishes that are strictly plants.
Exactly. Absolutely. So let me ask you, have you started thinking about your holiday meal? Like what's going to be on your menu? Or maybe you're going to be a guest somewhere. I don't know. Like what are your
Yeah,
plans?
no, I'm always the host.
Are you okay?
I
Of
am.
course, well, you
I
have to
am.
be.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I like to make some sort of mashed potatoes every year. One of my favorites is actually really nice if you have people with allergies or dietary preferences, because it's an olive oil mashed potato. So,
Ooh,
yeah, so you don't
love
need
it.
to use any dairy, no cream, no
Yeah.
butter. It's strictly the potatoes, and I like to put garlic in it, fresh garlic.
Yummy.
And then it's mashed with olive oil. So that is, super creamy and it feels luxurious, but it's actually super easy to make. So
Oh, that
that's
sounds
something
amazing.
that, I'm sure will be on my table. And then I like to make some kind of gravy that's also vegetable based. And again, this is really easy and also easy to make gluten free because you don't need to make a roux. So you don't need to use any flour. You can thicken it with other ingredients like cornstarch or tapioca
Yeah.
starch. So it's really easy to make. And so a lot of times I'll make a mushroom gravy or I'll make an onion gravy, and they're both
Ooh.
delicious. And, again, they don't take a lot of time because they're kind of a quick gravy rather than starting with a roux. So you're
Yeah.
just kind of sauteing vegetables and, adding some liquid in there and then something for a thickener. Arrowroot powder is another great thickener too that's allergy friendly. And so it just gets a lot of flavor, even though it doesn't take a lot of time to make.
Absolutely. It's so funny as you're describing that gravy. I grew up on that type of gravy, and it
Oh,
never
wow.
dawned on me that we were having plant-based gravy.
Yeah.
And it was always a very uh,
Yeah.
quick thing, no roux, no anything, that's how
Yeah.
I grew up. My mom would just make gravy like that, with she'll have her onions and tomatoes, celery,
Mm-hmm.
and she'll just kind of whip up a quick gravy there, and we'll put that over our rice and
Yeah,
went to
that's
town. It took
great.
no time, and I didn't
Absolutely.
even think about that. So
Yeah. So your
thanks for
mom was
sharing
was
that.
showing, putting in all those vegetables and you didn't even
Oh
know
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
it.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah,
cool,
that's
cool.
great.
So let's talk a little bit about how seasonings and herbs play a role in
Yeah.
what, like bringing together your, plant-based menu. How does that impact how you decide, what to make or what you put in your menu items? How is that? What's the impact of those
Yeah,
fresh herbs in your menu?
that's a great question. What I find is that especially when you're making vegetable dishes, having just either fresh or dried herbs and spices can really make all the difference. So, even if you're taking something that appears so simple, just adding some herbs and seasonings can really take the dish over the top. So whether you're, roasting vegetables, or sautéing them, I think of the holidays, roasting is one of the most popular
Yeah,
preparations. So let's talk
yeah,
about that. So
yeah,
you can take like either one vegetable or a pair or a whole medley, and I think just adding in some of those seasonings that we think that give us those holiday flavors, like thyme
yeah.
is one of those.
Time,
So
yes.
thyme is such a great versatile herb, and dry thyme is really economical and it gives a lot of flavor. So don't feel like you have to get the fresh thyme from the market. If you have a jar of dried thyme leaves, as long as they're still fresh, that's going to give you a ton of flavor. So, and especially like if you're making a soup or stew or something
Yes.
like that, that can really make a big difference. And then there's other herbs that we think of around the holidays, like sage and rosemary.
Oh,
And
yes.
even just adding some of those in with your roasted vegetables, I think it's like a simple step, but it just makes them so delicious.
It does. It really does. And I love that you talk about dried herbs because a little bit goes a long way. In
Yes.
fact, the dry herbs are a little more potent
Mm-hmm.
than fresh. So I always say just use sparingly and just keep adding as you need it. Because yeah,
Yeah.
you don't need to like go overboard with that either because it does tend to like the fresh thyme or like the sage and the rosemaries, they are pretty flavorful and you don't need
Yeah.
much of it. So that's great. And I love that you
Yeah.
talked about roasting because yeah, around the holidays we all love, that method of preparing our foods. And I know I find myself a lot of times just taking whatever I have. Um, it could be even like a half a squash that I haven't used up,
Mm-hmm.
or peppers or bell peppers or sweet potatoes. And I'll just lay them all out on a baking sheet and just put them in the oven to roast, with, my
Yeah.
avocado oil or my olive oil and my herbs. And I will just go to town with that and we'll have just a big tray of roasted vegetables and they're great for leftovers as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love roasting and the combination of roasting and those dried herbs are delicious.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I like to make a combination for Thanksgiving that's usually Brussels sprouts and some cauliflower and carrots, and maybe some red onion is really great, and some fresh garlic. And
Mm,
yeah, it just like the different flavors, so you get the bitter and the sweet, and just when you roast them in the oven, they kind of get that caramelized texture and flavor,
Oh
and it's
yeah.
it's really wonderful. So even something that's just so simple, like you said, just using whatever you have on hand, putting it all together and adding some seasoning, really can make it special. And
I
one of
agree.
my favorite seasonings to use in roasting vegetables is called sumac, and it's sumac is a berry that it's dried and it's a red color, and then it's ground into a red powder. And
Oh.
earlier you were talking about Persian food. If you've ever been to a Persian restaurant, they usually have containers on the table, little shakers like with the salt and pepper. That's a container of sumac, and the flavor is very similar to citrus. So it just gives it a nice pop of fresh flavor. And, if you're looking to try something different this year, I have a recipe that's for fall roasted vegetables, and it uses the sumac seasoning. And I think you
Ooh.
should give it a try. I think you're going to
Oh
enjoy it.
yes. Oh, this
Yeah.
is awesome. I've never tried the sumac.
Yeah.
So,
I know, since you love citrus too, I think you really like it.
oh, I'm excited about this now. I'm
Yeah.
definitely gonna have to check that out. So you've been dropping like throughout this entire episode, like all these little recipe ideas, but there's one in particular that you're sharing with our community. I feel like I'm getting like all kinds of tidbits from you right now, but it's your green beans with mushrooms
Yeah.
recipe, and I can't wait because I will be making that this weekend.
Oh,
And well, by the
great.
time this it goes live, I would have already made it, and I'll be sharing it on my social media. But I can't wait to try because I love green beans and I love mushrooms. So, like two of my favorite things, like you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
But talk
Yeah,
us through a little bit
absolutely.
of
Yeah.
that
So,
recipe.
I first started making this several years ago when I was looking for a healthier alternative to green bean casserole. So, that's
Ah,
traditional on a lot of holiday tables, but, like, honestly, it was never my favorite growing up. I think something about the condensed cream of mushroom soup just was not my favorite.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so,
I'm right there with you.
and yeah, and using, canned green beans,
Yeah,
definitely not appealing to
no.
me. Um, so, what I do for this recipe is I first blanch the green beans. And if you're not familiar with blanching, it's a way to quickly cook the whatever vegetable you're using, and then immediately transfer it to an ice bath. So, which is just, a bowl with water and ice cubes in it, so that it stops the cooking. And what it does is it shocks the vegetable. So in this case, the green beans, so it stays nice and crisp and bright green. So what you're doing is you're either steaming or quickly boiling the green beans, just for maybe 2 minutes. So they're tender, but they're still very crisp. And then you're stopping the cooking process by adding them to the ice bath, and that way not only are the green beans crispy, but they also keep that nice the green color. Because a lot of times you'll see cooked green bean dishes that they kind of look a little gray or
Yeah,
brown.
yeah.
Yeah, and so that's what tends to happen. But if you put them in the ice bath, then they'll keep that really vibrant color. So then all you need to do then is allow them to cool, which will only take a few minutes, and then, pat them dry with a kitchen towel, and then slice them into bite-sized pieces. And meanwhile, what you're going to do is you're going to saute some mushrooms with some fresh garlic. And, you can even skip the oil entirely if you prefer, because mushrooms lose a lot of water, a lot of moisture when you're cooking
Yeah.
them. So then what you're going to do is you're going to add back in the green beans and just quickly toss them through until they're, completely heated through. And then, season it with some salt and pepper. And it's just really flavorful, even though it's so incredibly simple.
Yeah, that's normally the case. Like the most simple
Mm-hmm.
dishes are the best, right? Like and you
Absolutely.
can have so oh my gosh, that would go well with like everything. Your mashed
Everything.
potatoes,
Yeah.
like oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
exactly. And if you want to add some herbs in there, you can. Like we talked about thyme, that's a great herb to add, or any of your favorite herbs, whatever you have on hand. But yeah, it's always one of my most popular holiday recipes. It always has a spike, for Christmas and Thanksgiving and even
Yes.
Easter. Everyone
Yes.
loves green beans. And it's a traditional part of your holiday table, but this is just a kind of a fresher, lighter way to prepare them.
I agree. And so versatile. Like what you said, you can
Absolutely.
add, additional herbs in there if you like.
Mm-hmm.
You can get really creative and do,
Yeah,
put your favorite flavors in there.
exactly.
So I love it. And yeah, I'll be making that this weekend.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear what you think.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that recipe. I'll be adding a link to your recipe in the show notes, as well as all the other great things that you've been talking about. This is so fun, so much fun, and you're really giving us so much inspiration. So before we kind of close out, this has been so much fun. I wanted to kind of ask you because you may know or may not. So I've got this Scrappy Kitchen series going on here where I like to share some ways that I'm utilizing my kitchen scraps.
Oh.
I've shared on many occasions that I'm trying to be a little bit more mindful about avoiding waste, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to share a lot more creative and innovative ways to utilize my kitchen scraps. So, Amy, I want to hear from you. Do you have a scrappy kitchen tip that you'd like to share with our community?
Oh, that is a great question. I love this series. Yeah, that's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say that one thing that I've been doing lately, it kind of leads back to what we were talking about with roasting our different vegetables together, is that when I have, a little bit left over of something, maybe it's part of a red onion or, half a bell pepper or anything like that, that I do make sure that I save it and that I use it that same week. So
Yeah.
I'll put it in a container that's kind of front and center in the refrigerator. So I make sure that I grab that whenever I'm making something. And actually, one of my favorite ways to use up these kitchen scraps is to make a big soup. So I
Yeah.
recently have been making a lot of a recipe that I have on my website that's for red lentil potato soup. And
Ooh.
what I do is I'll take whatever, vegetables that I have left over from the week and I'll add them to the soup. So, maybe it's a few green beans or, part of that bell pepper. Or, it could be anything. It could be some broccoli. Anything really goes well in a vegetable soup. So
Yeah.
you can kind of be creative and try different things. One time I had like some leftover beets and I put them in there and that kind of
I
made
bet
it
that
like a
was good.
bright, yeah, it was good, but it also made it like a bright pink color.
Bright pink. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was kind of funny, but it tasted great. So,
That's
whatever you
wonderful.
have, yeah, try it in your soup.
Playing with your food, right? And you
Yeah,
never know,
absolutely.
you never know, you may find something new that you like. And
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
exactly.
envisioning that soup and the color of the soup,
Yeah.
but I bet it was delicious. So
Oh, yeah, absolutely
yeah.
delicious.
That's a
Yeah.
great tip, Amy. I love that. And I love soups. And this is the perfect time to talk about that because, we'll be doing a lot of cooking, a lot of eating,
Yeah.
but a lot of cooking. And, typically, a lot of waste happens. So this is a
Hmm.
really, really great tip that you shared with us of just, utilizing those leftover ingredients, throwing them in a soup, or throw them in a stew, or, like a lot of times, even I love bell peppers. I grow a lot of them. But if you don't get a chance to use them up right away, stick them in the freezer. And you can, you can pull them out and then just put them in a stew, or a soup if if you're not going to be able to use it right away. Peppers freeze really, really well for that. So as long as you're not going to eat, like they will be soggy if you're going to eat it fresh like that. But if you're just throwing them in a soup or a stew, they're perfect. So that was a really, really great tip. So guys, make those soups with your Thanksgiving leftovers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Amy, what do you have going on? I know you've had a few really fun projects, some fun collaborations over the past few months, going into the holidays and maybe even to next year. Do you have anything fun that we should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, well, if you're not already, you should definitely get on my email list. You can subscribe at veggiesavetheday.com. And I do have some exciting things in the work that I can't really tell you about, but if you get on
Cliffhanger.
if you get on my email list, we may have something special going on around, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And then I always like to come up with something special to share in January for anyone who wants to try going plant-based for Veganuary, as they call it.
I love it.
So stay tuned. And you can visit my website, veggiesavetheday.com. And when you do, you can sign up to get my free instant flavor guide. That's the 4-step formula to take your vegan meals from dull to delicious.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. So I love that you're kind of teasing us there. So guys, get on her mail list because that's the way that you're going to find out firsthand from Amy what she has going on. I know she's cooking up something really, really good. Pun intended. Pun.
Yeah.
There was a little pun there. I was not intending that, but she's always working on some fun, creative things. So definitely get on her mail list. Yeah. Well, Amy, this was so much fun. Again, thank you so much for joining me once more. Guys, if you haven't heard our first episode with Amy, please go back. I will actually put a link to our first episode where we talked a little bit more about, just the plant-based diet, some tips that Amy shared. Of course, she shared another amazing recipe. So go back and listen to that episode if you haven't had a chance yet. It's like amazing. So Amy, I again, thank you so much for joining me. This was so much fun. I had a fun time as always. And I can't wait to have you back on.
It's always a pleasure, Ginain. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. Take care, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Cook the Garden. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. As a new podcast, it really helps to add value while growing our awesome community. As always, I really appreciate it. Until next time, friends, keep slaying those garden fresh recipes.